oh, what the?
Oh, no, I was just like, well, like having like the form, but yeah, we can't see it, so. Okay, cool.
Welcome back.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. This is our part 2 from our home buying process video.
Yeah, today we're going to talk about stratas. More specifically, when you purchase a strata property and what to look for. And again, in this video, we won't be able to talk about every single detail, but we'll talk about at least the key things, in our opinions, that will be very useful for you. So why don't we get started, Amira? What are some of the key things or the key terms that people generally don't know or might confuse them with other terms?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about 3 core terms when talking about financing for your stratas. So the first one, which you've probably heard of, is going to be your strata fees. And that's a monthly fee that you're going to pay, and it goes towards maintaining the amenities, general maintenance of the building, paying for a janitor, whatever it may be that you have accessible to you. If there's different, heating that's available to you, water, anything like that. That'll all go from there, and then you're also going to have what's called special levies. Special levies are going to be to fund upcoming projects when you don't have enough finances in your reserve contingency fund, and so that would be charged to each unit based off of their unit entitlement, similar to your strata fees. But this is going to be separate. This is going to be, sometimes a one-time payment, or sometimes they'll allow you to break it up into installments. Generally, they're for a little bit larger amounts as well, because it'll be for your building envelopes, your piping, things like that.
And those, for those of you who don't know what unit entitlement means, is basically just like a proportion of how much you own in the strata or the complex. So just a legal term to mean like, okay, I own this portion, usually based on the square footage of your property.
Yeah, and so if you have a smaller unit, you're going to pay less strata fees, you're going to pay less special levies, and it's just to make it fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the contingency fund, also known as the CRF, so if you hear CRF, that's what it is how much money the Strata Corporation or the Strata has to fund special projects or like emergencies, like the roof is leaking. What are we gonna do? We need like 30,000, or maybe probably more like hundreds of thousands to fund a roof. So that's why it's important to have a safe amount of CRF. And again, like Amira mentioned, if the strata doesn't have enough in the CRF, or the strata owners, they don't want to spend into or don't want to use the fund in the CRF, then there will be a special levy which comes out as a lump sum that each and every owner needs to pay. So not fun, it's never fun. That's why lower strata fees does not always mean the best way to go in all situations, because you might have special levies down the line.
Yeah, well, and higher strata fees can also indicate there may be a project coming up. So there's a lot we could get into with that.
Yeah.
If you are curious, we're happy to always help out with that. And ultimately just always read through all of your strata documents, which is what we're going to get into next.
Yeah.
And it'll talk about some of these terms as well. So Wilfred, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, the first thing would be the Form B. So what the Form B is, it's typically 2, sometimes 1-page document that summarize the entire strata lot unit, as well as what's going on into the strata. So, for example, you have how much CRF, the contingency reserve fund, is available, the exact strata fee for that specific unit that you're looking to purchase, as well as which specific parking lot, if any, and which storage locker is associated with that specific unit. Then it also tells you whether it's a limited common property or whether it's a common property, and whether there's some conditions tied into that parking lot and that storage locker. So that's like a quick important thing that to look for. It also says how much the current seller owes to the strata. sometimes they're getting sued by Strata because they did something that they are not supposed to, or they owe money that they haven't paid the Strata fees.
Yeah.
It will be indicated on the Form B. So it gives you like a good, quick rundown of what's going on with that Strata unit.
Mm-hmm. And then just to touch on really quick as well is when you're talking about the parking spots and the storage lockers, and kind of how they're referenced, if they're common property, limited common property, etc., is that's going to give you an indication if you can sell the parking, if you can rent it, all those different kinds of things. You know, I know some people previously in downtown had sold their parking spots. I'm sure in other areas as well. And in some areas you're not allowed to do that, where you can only sell to someone else in the strata, things like that. So it's really important just to take note of that, especially if you're, you know, wanting to sell your parking, or if you're wanting to rent it, or whatever that may be. Storage. So
whether you have 1 car, 2 cars, or 0 cars, then it's good to know. And sometimes the developer might use that space for something else. They could transform it into commercial parking. So it's rare, but it's always good to know so that you're not surprised. So after the Form B, what do we have, Amara?
So after the Form B, we're going to talk about meeting minutes and AGMs. So the meeting minutes are essentially monthly meetings, or at least they should be monthly. And essentially they're going to be talking about any kind of little details as they come. And then those will lead up over the year to the AGM and the focus of the AGMs. So for example, in the meeting minutes, they may talk about any kind of complaints. I really like looking at these to find out about your neighbors. What kind of complaints are they making? What's going on in the building? You can take a look at this for break-ins as well. They'll mention any break-ins, so if that's a concern for you. You know, if you're worried about security, or if you're looking in an area where you're not as comfortable or familiar with, having an indication of that. As well as so many other things. They'll talk about different maintenance issues in the building. You know, they'll even debate how much they should be paying for repair people and all of that.
Yeah, EV parking, whether they will install it or not. Leakage. Sometimes people, your neighbors who are breaking the bylaws, and then you know whether they are good neighbors or not.
And then leading on to that as well, like I said, you're going to go into those AGMs, which is an annual general meeting. And that's going to be where you're going to vote on things like your special levies. Those can also be through SGMs, which is a special general meeting. Essentially, that's just when they call you together at a time other than the AGM and other than your regular meetings to discuss any big fees or any big projects coming up or anything that they would need you to vote on. So those are really important to take a look at, to know about upcoming projects as well. And also, I find to look at previous projects. So if it's an older building, have they rain screened the building? Have they gone in recently and done the pipes? Has the roof been updated recently? Those can all be indicated through those AGMs and SGMs, and even through the meeting minutes as well.
That's right.
Anything else to add in those ones? There's so much in there.
There's so much. We can keep going. But obviously each strata minutes will be specific to each strata out there. So that's why it takes time. So don't rush into that process. And to add to that, we also have the bylaws in those strata documents that will tell you a couple of key important things. A lot of things, but key important things will be what kind of pets are allowed, whether pets are allowed, first of all, and whether it's 1 cat, 1 dog, 2 dogs, 2 cats, whether they allow exotic pets. Sometimes they tell you that. And then second thing, important thing would be the rentals. Typically, most buildings now become rentals allowed, no Airbnbs though, so anything that's short term, so less than 31 days or a month, then it's not allowed, but most of it after that is allowed. Some special cases, especially older stratas, would have no rentals allowed, so that could be a good thing for owner, because then they don't see a lot of new people coming on and through, so you would really get to know your neighbors that way. So those are 2 important things in the bylaws. Other minor things could be like the barbecue, if you like to have your barbecue out during the summer on your balcony or your patio. So that's all those will be in the strata bylaws.
Yeah, so lots of important information in there. And then following the bylaws, we're just going to talk about engineering reports and depreciation reports. And we'll keep this one a little bit short and sweet because there is, again, so much to these. I like to look at the graphs on these ones, but I'm just trying to get a quick snapshot. It's going to talk about how they're planning on funding the next 30 years of projects. And so they'll base this off of the lifespan of each component in the physical building. And so that'll be things like the piping, the roofing. They'll cover everything. They're actually quite extensive in these.
Pretty much everything. It's a very thorough and detailed report.
And the key thing to look at is that at this, if you're just initially looking at a home, is going to be the graphs that talk about special levies, CRF, and how they're just planning on funding the different projects that are coming up. So they'll typically show like a red bar, maybe a gray bar, and they'll have them side by side. And whenever you see that red bar spike up to the top of the special levies, you know that's when they're thinking they're going to have a big project. It is just an estimate. So again, that's why we're going to reference your meeting minutes, your AGMs.
And to add to that, they give you 3 financial models that the strata owners can vote on, depending on how much strata fees they want to pay. Typically, they will need a 3/4 vote to accept the specific model that they want to go with. So, for example, let's say if they want to increase the strata fees to all the way up to the maximum, then they would have, of course, less special levies or less risk of a special levies. Whereas, like if you have a lower strata fees, then there's more risk of a special levy. Again, special levy meaning that they would need to come out of their own pocket, let's say to repair like a leakage, which could be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, sometimes all the way up to $70,000 per owner. So it can be very expensive to own. So watch out for that.
And then the second part I mentioned is the engineering reports. And so those are going to be a little bit more niche. And so you'll have your depreciation report. Let's say it tells you that you have the pipes coming up in the next 2 years of needing to get replaced. You'll probably call someone in advance. You'll hopefully call someone in advance and have them take a look and do an engineering report for you. And this is going to give you a really good idea of exactly how much work needs to get done, and then your options as well. So for some situations, especially in properties where there are a lot of investors, a lot of renters, they're going to be going for the cheaper options. So they're probably going to go for the patch up, for the quick repair, whatever that may be. And so there will be quotes in there for different options and opportunities. And then everyone will vote on that again in those like AGMs, SGMs, everything like that. So from there, you'll decide how you want to approach the project and kind of how high quality essentially you want to take care of whatever's happening.
And of course, like the strata owners can choose which contractor, general contractor or whoever will be repairing, get quotes from different companies and vote on which one they would want to work with, essentially. And after that, we have the financial statements, which is basically a quick summary of the money that's coming in and the money that's coming out. Nothing too crazy complicated. I mean, in the Strata document, it can look intimidating because there's lots of numbers and like bunch of description of where those numbers associated with, but it just means, okay, so we have a bunch of money and where are they coming from, and then a bunch of money that's coming out and where are those going, and then we have a final number, the net profit or the net loss. Hopefully it's a net profit, and it should be a net profit for Strata specifically. Then so you have a quick snapshot of what the financial healthiness of your strata or potential future strata is. So that's what you can see as well. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is...
Okay, so the last one that we're going to talk about is the strata plan. And that's going to give you the layout of the building. It's going to identify what's common property and then what is your own unit there. And it'll talk about your unit entitlement in there. So it'll explain through a percentage what you're contributing. So that'll kind of equate to your strata fees, equate to the amount that you contribute to special levies, and all of that, and it'll be based generally off the size of your unit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's a legal document that also shows like the square footage. Usually it's in meter square for some reason, but at least you can convert it and have like a good idea. But always, if that's super important for you, always measure it, because sometimes they measure it from the middle of the wall, so like the middle of the wall, but not just like at the border of the wall. So it's like, anyways, if you're very picky about the square footage, exact square footage, hire a professional to do it for you, or we can recommend you one.
Yeah, you always see that as well. It just says buyer to verify important.
Exactly.
So it doesn't mean that they're not having professionals do it. It just means that different people are going to measure a little bit differently, and that it is important that you check for yourself as well if you're wanting an exact square footage, like Wilfred was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it for Strata. Anything you wanted to add on top?
I think there's always more that we can talk about.
Yeah.
I think if you guys have any questions, just reach out to us. We're happy to meet with you, and it is something that I go over more extensively with my clients, and something I know you were saying you like to review a little bit more in detail and base it off of, you know, what you're interested in. So if you're a client and you're interested in knowing all the little details, I'm happy to sit down with you. We can talk through it and go over everything, or if you're wanting more of a recap, I'm happy to do that with you as well. So.
Yeah, so because in 10 minutes it's hard to convey everything. Like Amira mentioned, we're more than happy to describe from A to Z. And it's actually pretty fun. It looks boring, but it's not.
More than anything, this is going to be your home, and I think if you can take anything from it, hopefully it's helped simplify the documents for you. If you are going to be buying in a strata, take your time, read through everything. If you have time to do it before making the offer, great, get familiar, get acquainted, and then you can account for any upcoming expenses in your offer. If you don't have time, that's okay, you can put that into your subjects. But at the end of the day, make sure that you are reading through those. They give a lot of valuable information, and you know what we touched on was kind of just the surface. So.
Yeah, again, like Amara mentioned, like this is the most important thing, to make sure that you know how much you're paying, what are the bylaws, and what's upcoming, so that we can choose something that fits your financial situation as well as your tolerance for potential risk down the line.
Okay, thanks so much for listening, guys. This was our part 2 to the home buying process.
Yeah.
And reach out if you have any questions, and comment below if you guys found anything interesting or if you learned anything in the video here. We're always excited to see, you know, what you guys like about the videos and incorporate that into our next ones as well. So
Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.